John Nichols, professor, doctor, either
John
one.
Nichols.
All right,
fine.
just John Nichols, who is running for the College Station. Almost said city council, but he is a councilman running for mayor. Thank you so much for coming on Think Brazos.
Appreciate being here. Thank you.
Yeah. So first of all, usually like to take a few minutes just to explain to our audience who you are, your background a little bit, and especially why you're running for mayor.
Right. Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to share some ideas and thoughts. My family and I have been in this community for a number of decades. I came here to work at Texas A&M University and never left. I moved through the professorial ranks in a normal way and was very engaged in the research leadership in the Department of Agricultural Economics across the whole ag programs representing economics. I wound up as department head and retired from the department as department head, having served 7 or 8 years in that role. And my entire life, my family's entire life here, we've been engaged in the community. I have always sought community service, civic service through the Lions Club, where you join an organization that can do a lot more than you can do by yourself. And
sure.
From that, I got involved in the organization of the youth soccer program in College Station.
Oh, nice.
Back in the 70s.
So you're a coach or something?
Well, I didn't know how to play soccer, so I was absolutely not eligible to be a coach. So I volunteered to line the fields and put the nets up, and then ultimately you get involved in the committee work and became president of the organization in the 70s. And
got it.
Yes, a group of us that had kids growing up in that day and age, and soccer was the thing, and so we would find a few parents that knew a little bit about it. They could coach, and the rest of us got involved in administration and fundraising and support.
Got it.
So that was an interesting time, and obviously soccer has become kind of one of the core youth sports in the community.
Right.
I'm really proud that I had a chance to work with that when my kids were of that age.
That's awesome.
Got involved in the arts community. I was help organize the Brazos Valley Symphony in the early 80s. It was a combination of a couple of smaller organizations. And once again, I don't play an instrument, but a symphony doesn't exist without an audience.
Right.
A symphony's got to have an audience. So I got involved in the business side and chaired committees and served in a couple offices. And I was president of the Symphony Society for a period there in the 80s, and from that got involved in the Arts Council because the symphony was part of the Arts Council. So I went through the board roles in Brazos Valley Arts Council, and that was an interesting and fun time back when we had the little blue building on University Drive that was recently torn down, and now going to be a Dutch Bros coffee shop where the old Arts Council was back in my day. Got involved in city activities in the 90s, volunteer work, and then was appointed to the Parks Board and served 6 years on that, 3 years as chair. And from the Parks Board, I really enjoyed that role with the city. I was appointed to the Planning and Zoning Commission, which gets you into a lot heavier kinds of responsibilities. I was chairman of that for 4 years, which took me up to 2010. I actually was not retired from Texas A&M at that time, and I did try to run for an unfilled term, and I lost that election by 75 votes. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about the issue, how you organize a campaign and that sort of thing. 2012, I was elected and reelected in 2015 to the city council. After a year off in 2016, from 2017, I ran for another seat, and in 2020, I was reelected to that seat in a competitive race.
You ran for mayor at some point.
I ran for mayor in 2016 and lost by 400 votes in that campaign, and so I had to resign from my seat, of course, and I was off for a year. So I got involved. That's when I got involved in Chamber of Commerce activities. I joined the Chamber of Commerce when I retired because I wanted to get engaged in the local community in a different way beyond the nonprofit side, and given me a lot of opportunity to understand the business propositions of a lot of our chamber members. I have chaired the Transportation Committee for the Chamber under the leadership of Legislative Affairs for the last 5 years, and recently turned that over to another person.
Got it.
Organizing monthly meetings, and I have learned a lot about the transportation, traffic, congestion, construction, funding, issues related to transportation in our community by having organized, I think, 45 monthly meetings over a 5-year period for the Chamber of Commerce. So that was a fun time, and I continue to be interested in transportation as one of my core issues in the community.
What would be, if you could point out one main priority goal that you want to accomplish if you're elected mayor here in a month and a half or whatever it is? Yeah. What would that be?
Well, let me lay a predicate to that.
Sure.
I think the mayor's role is critical as the leader of the council. So my priority is to work with the council to manage our council processes.
Okay.
Making sure all the members of the council are well informed, have all the information they need, have access to all of the information from the various departments in the city, and that our meetings are efficient, and that we stay on task. I have leadership experience in academic life.
Right.
When I was department head, I had 60 faculty members, a big department, 60 faculty members that were direct reports to me. And then to the extent that any faculty member reports to anybody,
sure,
it was a good training ground, I think, for pulling people together who have disparate views of their professional roles and the responsibilities of the department to seek consensus. So I think the mayor's main role, different from a council member, is bringing people together, making sure they're well informed, having good, efficient meetings that the public is well informed and engaged, and that we try not to reinvent the wheel every time we have a public meeting. We move on with the items on the agenda.
So no 7 or 8 hour meetings is what I think you're hoping for.
I'll never shut anybody down,
right?
Unless they're off task. I think sometimes council members, me included, we tend to bring in some tangential discussions during when we're supposed to be focusing on one issue, and I want to make sure that that our debate is after a motion is on the floor,
right?
Rather than when we're asking questions of an applicant or staff, getting into the value judgments. That period of time is supposed to be for information gathering and finding out what the applicant or city staff has to present and getting the detail, and then work into the debate when the time for debate comes. And I won't guarantee we don't have any long meetings, but I'll try to keep them moving forward. So with that as a predicate, clearly finance, city's finances and budget is a priority of mine. I've served on the Council Budget and Finance Committee for a number of years, so I'm intimately involved with how the budget's put together, and where the initial priorities are set and the city's vision is put into action. So I would say keeping engaged in the financial side of the city will be a number one priority. We've got some significant challenges coming up, building a new fire station that will require a substantial increase in the operation and maintenance side to fulfill that. We've got 3.5% revenue cap on our O&M revenue coming in, with inflation running 6 to 8%. Maybe it'll drop back to 4 to 5%, but I don't see it being 3 or 2 any time in the next 2 or 3, 4 years. So we're looking at probably 2 or 3 years out where we're really going to be very much of a crossroads, so to speak, I think. Now, right now, we're in pretty good financial shape because we've got good reserves. So that's one area that I'm really engaged in and plan to be involved in. As I said, transportation, traffic, infrastructure, road infrastructure is another area that I'm pretty well informed on. Using the city's resources to leverage resources from the county, from the new RMA and from TxDOT and federal sources to build out our infrastructure needs around here is going to be a priority of mine. I have worked in another area, the stability of neighborhoods, and this gets into housing. That I think we could do more to incentivize some of the rehabilitation of some of the rental properties that are scattered around the community. And I've been a supporter of neighborhood integrity, and I was a supporter of the residential occupancy overlay. But I was also very much a supporter, and I negotiated from my side to make sure we had grandfathered those rental properties that already existed in the neighborhoods that were registered as rental units.
Right.
I felt like the investment in those needed to be protected, and I think we need to provide housing for people that, and some of it's rental properties are in neighborhoods, and I don't see just wiping that out. That's just not where I go. So I think again, that's another role that I played in negotiating and seeking consensus on that very difficult issue. So
Gotcha.
I think those neighborhoods that want to adopt that enabling legislation have that option. And we got a process set up for it. As a matter of fact, we will soon be considering the first request under that for neighborhood on in Emerald Forest, just off of North Forest Drive.
Got it.
It's a pretty small area, but they've followed the rules, and we will see how it comes forward.
Yeah, you actually mentioned at not to get too into the weeds, but at one of the most recent council meetings, when discussing the RU and some small changes that maybe would be made to it, you said something to the effect of that there's like a loophole of sorts, maybe, where someone could rent out a room, but not the whole thing. And I was curious about that.
I was concerned about that. Somebody, one of the audience members, brought it up as a big loophole. But I came back to that issue because I was really concerned about it. I didn't really think it existed. As I understand it, the discussion was around whether or not you have a homestead exemption on the property. You're a homeowner with a homestead exemption. And basically, if you have that, you cannot be a registered rental property.
Right.
And so, therefore, that loophole really doesn't exist that the individual was asking for, where somebody who has a homestead exemption and they live in there, then they turn it into rental while they're living there. You can't do that.
So also regarding the RU, one of the things I've been curious about following it is I totally get where the neighborhoods are coming from. And I like that they actually have a tool to consider doing something about it. What I have wondered about is where are all the other people that would have lived in X neighborhood? Where are they going to go instead? And I don't feel like I'm 100% gotten to the answer on that. And where is the city at on that?
Okay, well, it's a legitimate question, but number one, if there are rental units in that area that adopts the RU, they are grandfathered.
Right.
And they are grandfathered by property right, not just by lease, as it is in Bryan.
Right.
In our city, if somebody sells that registered rental unit to some other investor, the right goes with them to continue it as a rental. So that means we aren't reducing the number of rental properties. And in the analysis originally, if you look at College Station, you will find many neighborhoods. Southwood Valley is a good example where significantly more than 50% of the properties are already rental, 60, 70, 80. It's clear that they will never adopt a RU.
Right.
So there are tremendous areas in the city where the formerly, where formerly single-family homes have been converted into rentals. They're never going to go back. They will always be rentals. They're not there's not anything we can do about that if we wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
What we were doing was offering an option for those neighborhoods that are outside that area, right, that would like to have the stability of not being 80 or 90% rental. Yeah, they're 20 or 30% rental. Mm-hmm. Let's stabilize that neighborhood so that the people moving in know what the relationships are.
Right.
So I think there's plenty of rental options. You've got a tremendous amount of apartment complexes being built, certainly sixplexes and lots of townhomes in areas like the mm-hmm. barracks and other places that are 99% rental. I mean, people buy them as investment properties, put their kids in there for 3 or 4 years. When they finish A&M, they continue with a property manager to rent that out and earn an income stream.
Sure. So talking of affordable housing, I was at a meeting this summer where a lady spoke up and said, we need to stop talking about affordable housing in College Station because, quite honestly, the traditional form of affordable housing doesn't exist. And she listed what the average appraisal for a single-family home. I know that there's some looking at missing middle housing that the city is mm-hmm. looking at, trying to find unconventional ways to have, quote, affordable housing. Mm-hmm. Is there a place in College Station still where it can be relatively affordable? And do you have any ideas of how to?
I've got several ideas, and none of which provide the clear solution to the conundrum of high land prices, mm-hmm. which is really what drives, and it isn't just the recent 3 or 4 years. This is a 10 or 20 mm-hmm. year trend of College Stations of limited size, 51 square miles roughly. Mm-hmm. We have some greenfield development areas left in the city, almost no opportunity to annex because of state regulations.
Yeah.
And therefore, if you want to live inside a College Station, the people that own the land realize that the future value of that is substantial. And people, even today, the developers cannot buy some of that land mm-hmm. because people are just saying, well, I'm going to wait 10, 15 years and then I'll sell it because it'll be worth 6 times as much. So that's that's the underlying mm-hmm. Concern. But I think we need to separate the federal income level, the 80% of mm-hmm. Whatever it is, that and providing housing for that. That is where the CHODOs, the nonprofits, come in, mm-hmm. Habitat being one, Elder Aid being another one that does a really good job. Mm-hmm. So the city has put funds into, as you know, trying to underwrite some of using our home funds as mm-hmm. federal funds to underwrite the cost of the land so that Habitat doesn't have to bear the burden of land. You bear mm-hmm. the burden of gaining the donations to build the homes and using the labor and all of that. College Station is going to have a limited opportunity to fulfill that end of the need.
Right.
Now, some things we have done. We have come up with some very limited lot size opportunities through PDDs, mm-hmm. which gets more houses per acre into an area so that the developers can build it for what used to be 275, now 325 mm-hmm. or whatever. I don't know exactly. Some of the prices are going over 300 for those very small lots, and a very much a starter home,
right?
Like I bought on Barrack Lane 45 years mm-hmm. ago. A nice 3-bedroom house right on Barrack Lane, and I had maybe a quarter-acre lot. Now you're getting, I'm not sure what it is, 40 feet in the front and mm-hmm. maybe 80 feet deep or something like that, less than 5,000 square feet in the lot. Mm-hmm. And so the city has offered some options in mm-hmm. that area and tried to improve our flexible regulatory flexibility to mm-hmm. bring that in. I think one of the things that people miss is they look at the prices of new homes. And I think if you look around the community, there are a number of houses built in the 60s and 70s. Mm-hmm. A lot of them have already turned to rental. Mm-hmm. But I think there are opportunities to look at $175,000 to $225,000 homes that are certainly 30 or 40 years old.
In College Station?
In College Station. Huh. On the side streets in some areas where you can get into a property in say the South Knoll area, I mean out a little further away from the campus, you're competing some with the rental investors, obviously.
Right.
But I'm searching for ways to find those properties where the demand is not so much for those 3-bedroom houses anymore because of all the amenities that are being afforded in the luxury apartments, which were overbuilt for a while.
Sure.
And they started competing with $400 a month rent, and you got the lazy river, and you got the theater rooms, and you got the exercise rooms. You're on the bus route, and all of those sorts of things.
Okay.
I have advocated, and the city has initiated some planning for incentivizing young families to buy into those homes. And what I would like to see is a forgivable grant or loan for about $30,000 to $40,000, because those folks still want to have a kitchen, a master bathroom. They want new carpeting.
Sure.
You can't raise the ceilings. There's still going to be an 8-foot ceiling. You want to fix up the landscaping and move back into some of those neighborhoods, like in my neighborhood there in the Bee Creek area and the Southwood area. That we're inside of 2818, 2 miles or less from campus.
Right.
Let's see if we can't incentivize the repurposing of some of those properties from rental back to, but they got to have a homestead exemption. They got to commit to that, and see if we can't incentivize some of that. I've talked about having it in a particularly defined area for a demonstration project. The city staff doesn't believe that is going to be legally possible.
Okay.
If we're offering incentives, you got to offer it across the city, but a limited number. 10 or 20 of those a year, maybe find some funds that we can actually commit to that program. Yeah. And we do have the down payment programs for families that are income qualified as well.
Sorry.
So those are some aspects of it.
Yeah.
Did we run past the 21
apologize.
minutes?
We did. We can go for a couple more minutes. Is there anything else that we haven't talked about so far? I know there are a ton of other issues that we might want to hit, but what would you?
Well, let me just say one of the big current public topics is the city's involvement in the initiating the redevelopment of the Post Oak Mall. And I think you've read about that in the paper, and the city has committed to purchasing, subject to our last due diligence, the old Macy's building. We've been looking at ways for 7 or 8 years to do something to help the mall emerge as something different and new. That everybody I've talked to in the city, every public meeting we've had on redevelopment, they all put their finger on Post Oak Mall. So the city is making a very careful commitment with a strategic plan, things we can't discuss. And so when a private deal fell through, we stayed out of it initially, but private deal fell through to buy the Macy's. We decided that we needed to take a position on that corner and protect that whole corner there. It's 7.5 acres, and so we paid $7.3 or $4 million for that, and we are now controlling the parking area and trying to prevent it from being carved up into pad sites until we bring the private investors and other public entities together. We're very much interested in the redevelopment of the mall.
What do you want to be there? Because I was curious about that.
Certainly we want retail to be there.
Right.
We want the retailers that are there to be successful. We want to add things that will generate traffic.
Okay.
Some of the original proposals, they were going to put storage buildings in there, where you're having all your storage stuff in there. And that would just kill them all. Once you start doing things like that, it doesn't generate any traffic. It blocks it off. We see possible entertainment venues, possible city recreation opportunities. Okay. But there are other private interests that come in there. It isn't just about us selling it to another big box retailer. That probably is not likely, and everybody suggested, what are you doing buying that? You're going to try to market it to another big box retailer? If one came along, we'd certainly consider it, but that's a very narrow window and not likely to happen. So there's other opportunities for the entire mall area, and if we can do something to stimulate it, that's what our belief is. We paid well into the appraised value, which was 6.4 to 11.4 million. We paid 7.3 or 4 for it. So we're well within that current appraised value level. The original buyers got it at fire sale. When the bankers told Macy's, you got to come up with the money, and they have 25 of these things going on all over the country, they just sold them off for whatever they could get initially. Oh, wow. That's why the investors from California got it for $3 million.
Got it.
And we stayed out of it then because we thought those people had a good plan. But their deal fell apart, and they put it back on the market. Yeah, they turned a nice profit, but we're still in it at, I think, a value that is well within the appraisal level, and I think we can energize much larger investments in the mall that we can't, it's not something we can't talk about real estate or any of the people that are involved in all of that, but we're hoping in a reasonable amount of time, within 6 months to 2 years, you'll see some of that happening.
Okay. Well, I wish we had more time, but is there a way that people can get in touch with you or learn more about you online, or what's your contact?
I have a Facebook page for John Nichols for mayor. They can go to that. I'm certainly on Facebook. My email address is out there, jpnichols41 at gmail.com, and I'm on Instagram as well.
Okay, perfect. Well, John Nichols, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Mr. Coates.